I want to compliment Deputy O'Leary and Deputy Kenny on bringing forward this piece of very, very badly needed legislation. Very badly, because you and I are aware of the case, Minister, and I wish you well in your role too. It's the first time I addressed you maybe in this House, of the Hendrick family, friends of your dad and friends of yourself down in Kilkenny, and an appalling way they were treated back a number of years ago. And Deputy Carl Nolan, Deputy Michael Collins and myself had the head of the private security industry in here in this House to meet Paul Scanlon, as a result of what went on in the roadside in Kilkenny, as a result of what went on to the White family under the famed Stephen Lamont, Kickham country, out in Tipperary, where thugs arrived in the middle of the night and broke into their property, caused untold damage and took away machinery. Thugs. And had a guard, a police car, or guard a car sitting at the gate of their house while this was going on. This wouldn't happen in Mugabe's Africa. And that's exactly what it was. We saw what happened in Roscommon. And I'm not going into the wrongs or rights of it, but I am going into the fact that we have mercenaries coming from outside the state, Northern Ireland, former SAS people, some coming from some foreign countries, and blindfold or balaclavas. They would have a well trained for the masks for COVID, I think, because they're well used to wearing thick balaclavas. You'd only barely see their eyes, clothed with knuckle dusters. The kind of equipment that they had, in many cases, and the injuries that they did at Joe Hendrick that night, that nearly kicked him to death. And I'm sure Deputy Howland is aware of it too. And thank God he's grown and young man now, but that much of his life, with the kicking he got, that his lungs weren't punctured with his ribs that were broken. They pulled him off the tractor. And I mean, just because he was trying to take a photograph of him driving his father's tractor down a country road. Barbaric. I waited 2 hours for a guard car to come. Barbaric. Under the law, and no law to deal with. So I wish you well, and I hope you do embrace this legislation and deal with it, because we met, as I said, the chair of Mr. Paul Scallon. I give rise to serious concerns about the capacity of the state to effectively sanction unlicensed security personnel. The group had organised, our group had organised that meeting to try and address the apparent lack of sanctions for those who engage in aggressive acts of intimidation while purporting to be linked to licensed security agents. And we've seen the Roscommon case, where some of the members that took part in that barbaric and dragged the poor man out of the house by the ear. Everyone could see it. They were fined for that. Heavy fines. But that's all they got. Slap in the wrist. Heavy fines is not to them, because they are after blood money. Massive money to do the dirty work for the banks. And evictions have massive connotations in this country. That's why the new Land League was set up and formed. And Jerry Beads, the president of that organisation, attended that meeting with us. And we had a further meeting in the security headquarters in Tipperary. But the legislation hasn't been enacted. And to make it worse, we found out at that meeting, we found out that, as I said, it was organised as a part of a wider issue to have all the stakeholders consulted, and indeed the homeowners and property owners who have, and many of them got very little protection from the courts, because many of them had to go in as lay litigants. And in some cases I was there with some of them, and I was there when a lady was brought from Cork in a prison van. She was traumatised, and she couldn't stand up. She was screamed at by the judge to stand up. She wasn't able to stand up physically. I wasn't able to speak up either. The trauma of it and what's going on. And then in the middle of COVID, you went off and you removed, inside medical health legislation, you had a particular paragraph or two to remove the hearsay clause, to allow these vultures to hire these criminals. That's what they are. Many of them have criminal records. And they had to do this kind of, we saw it in Balbriggan, you referred to it yourself. They parked their vehicles that day in the Garda station. And that's well known. So, I mean, it's time this was brought into some bit of order. As I said, overall, we have had a very constructive engagement with the Security Authority and on Tipperary, and are doing their best, where significant amounts of detail relating to the acts of violence carried out by rogue operators, and indeed some licensed operators, were put to the CEO and of the PSA. And as I said, we found out then that the board, we're aware that the board of the PSA, and that needs reform too, obviously, contains representatives from an Assistant Garda Commissioner, as well as the Minister for Education and Skills, and the Minister for Justice and Equality. So in light of that, it is highly unlikely that the previous government minister wasn't aware of these problems. If they were, is it like more boards that we have, and more quangos that we have, that are not doing their job? They're not really supervising, they're not doing what they're there for. We have boards and boards and more boards and quangos, but are they doing their job? So I'm looking forward to this piece of legislation being embraced by the government, and I'll be maintaining a vigilant watch over it to ensure that you do. because the merciless receivership that's going to happen in this country in 2021, because of you removing the hearsay clause and because of you removing any protections for homeowners, and that is going to be unleashed, and these thugs are waiting for it, so they need to be reined in. Good morning.